Welcome to Renewable New Mexico, a program about the people and companies that make our state an epicenter for renewable energy innovation. My name is Shawn Wells, and I'm your host, and today's topic is energy efficiency in the schools. And to help us discuss it is our first guest, Rioux, the District Energy Conservation Coordinator for the Albuquerque Public School System. Ron, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Well, we had your title up there as the Energy Czar. Was that your friends at NMSCA there?
Yeah, they have a tendency sometimes to award and present things, and with the program that was going on about 4 years ago now, the program was about 5 years old, they decided to nickname me the Energy Czar because we were saving so much energy in our schools.
So it really was a title of honor.
By all means, yes.
Despite the trophy of the hat that they designed for you.
Yes, and they're
now, does it actually function?
It does.
Oh, well,
when
good,
you're out
good.
in the sun.
That's helpful.
Their use of glue guns was phenomenal in this, but it is a great toy, and believe it or not, the kids love to see it on.
Now, we might have lost some structural integrity with that design, but at least you'll see. You'll see whatever's falling on you.
Yes, exactly.
So what brought you originally to New Mexico?
Actually, the Air Force did. I was in the military for 26 years, and they decided to take me away from Hawaii and bring me to New Mexico.
That's a small change.
Yes, a very small change. The beach is here, but the ocean is not. But it's been fun. It's brought about a different change in the realm of where I was in the military. And the energy side of it, in as much as I wasn't really aware of or even cared about a form of energy conservation until somewhere down the line about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, a gentleman asked me what I knew about energy conservation, and it caught me totally off guard, my boss. And I says, well, if you unplug the sucker, you probably save. And he says, you're qualified.
Yeah.
Build me an energy program.
Wow.
And 11 years ago, we started what was called Energy Stars, schools teaching about resource sustainability. And it was a behavioral proactive role where teachers, principals, students, and custodians made an effort to save energy at their schools. And for their efforts, we were able to provide them a portion of that savings back into the school budget. It didn't take long for principals wanting to buy into this concept, and it proved for the 9 years that we were doing that very successful.
So you essentially brought in no previous knowledge of energy efficiency and just used your common sense to build this program for APS.
I guess you could say that, yes.
That's fantastic.
With the philosophy, if you unplug it, you save, or if you turn it off, you save.
And then as you did that, you could quantify your results and
By all
then
means.
package it up and share that with other groups?
By all means, and that was the whole idea. There was a organization called Rebuild New Mexico that actually took the concept of Energy Stars and took it to 3 school districts in southern New Mexico. And I believe 2 of them are still doing the program down there. So it's not very intensive. It's just seeing what the schools are using.
So what are the obvious changes that you've implemented that?
Basically, it's the awareness of just turning things off when you don't need it.
So it's more about educating the facility managers to get them on a schedule of
more of the schools. When you stop and think about it, there's 2 categories of people in the schools that use energy: the custodians and the principals. If you get those people to shut it down in a safe environment, you're going to save. and that goes for thermostats or light switches.
And are you able to quantify that? I mean, you don't have to give me the numbers, but you could actually see on paper a difference.
Oh, by all means. We were averaging about an 18 to a 22% savings at most of the schools. And that turned out when you're running $2,000 a month electric bills at elementaries and $12,000 a month at middle schools, and anywhere from 18 to 20,000 at high schools, that 18 to 20% adds up very quickly.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I mean, who would not be excited about that kind of program? I could see a lot of principals lining up behind that and getting some energy behind that. Well, where would you like to see that kind of program? Where do you go from here?
Well, I think more and more, and particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, energy conservation has become more of an awareness. Our society is becoming aware of it. One of the things that I've noticed, though, is unlike recycling, you see a result based on what's piled up in the corner, and you get a sense of accomplishment. Unless you're providing information or rewards or incentives back for turning the light switch off, the people don't see that. So it is harder to quantify it unless you provide that feedback to them. And the rebate checks back to the schools was a very excellent way of quantifying it for them so that they could realize the savings.
That would motivate me.
And the money came from not paying P&M. It did not come out of the school budget or the district budget as per se. It was what we did not pay the utilities. So there was really no line item for that to happen.
Did you see it affecting the children? Were they aware of the systems, or was it all sort of happening behind
No,
the
I
scenes?
think they were to a degree aware of it. I know some of them went home and told their parents that if they saved money at their house, the kids, that they should receive a portion of that savings for their parents not paying.
A lot of parents thanking you for this program that you've
I know.
implemented.
But it was primarily the elementary and the middle school kids that seemed to really grasp it. High school kids wanted it at a different level, and they sometimes got into evaluating the school's performance by going around and doing an energy survey at the schools.
Well, you have a background with working with children after your time in the Air Force. You were working with ROTC children here in
Yes.
Albuquerque.
Right.
And then you did some volunteer work. Can I hear a little bit about that?
I was available. If somebody needed something or they wanted to do something, it was there. One of the things that's come out of the conservation side of it is with the support initially from Sandia Labs, we were able to start up a renewable road race, for lack of a better word. Sandia and then Los Alamos and P&M all jumped on board with APS and provided the needs to educate teachers about hydrogen fuel cells and where hydrogen can take our society in the future. Hydrogen seems very complicated when you say I'm going to get electricity out of a drop of water. But realistically, it proved to be very beneficial in this competition. All the teachers that participated in it received a formal training class on hydrogen for themselves, and then they in turn took that concept back to their kids. We provided the teachers with a fuel cell and an electric motor and some wheels and some gears and said, have your kids build a car, and then we will race it. Along with that, the students would also do an oral presentation on renewables, and they would also do an essay on renewables. And we rolled all that into a competition where, as it turns out now, we have about 50 schools from across the state, from Roswell, Carlsbad, Farmington, Los Alamos, that come every year to these hydrogen races.
Could you, just for the layperson, can you tell us what a hydrogen fuel cell is in a single sentence?
Basically, it's just that. It takes distilled water and separates the H2O from H2 and the oxygen, and it creates hydrogen. And hydrogen is then turned into electricity through a fuel cell, or an electrolyzer, excuse me, that will drive an electric motor.
I want to take that course. I want to be in that race. So we have a little bit of time. What's the one thing you would like to leave people with? What thought would you like to transplant?
I think having our society move into a direction of utilizing renewables when it's the appropriate thing to do, and not necessarily force it down everybody's throat. Sooner or later, oil's going to run out. Sooner or later, the resources that we've currently been using are just going to run out. And we're going to need to find a different way of producing the energy. After all, we use, what, 25% of the world's population is in the United States using the energy. And sooner or later, we've got to find a better way. There's a lot of talk about global warming. I don't know. But it seems like something's happening in our environment that's causing change that we're experiencing, whether it's the dry weather or whether it's the overabundance of floods. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing that information and for being here and bringing your energy to the program today.
It's been my pleasure, and I thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with our next guest. Welcome back to Renewable New Mexico. The title of today's program is Renewable Energy, the Next Generation. I'd like to welcome our guest, Lisa Silva, who has a decade in the field of environmental education. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us today.
Thank you, Sean. It's a pleasure to be here.
I was just admiring your beautiful dress, which you had mentioned was hand-stitched and originally from Mexico, but it has that cultural feel of New Mexico that we love. But you're not originally from New Mexico. What brought you here?
My sister. My sister got married and moved here, and we all followed.
Yeah, that's a common story. We get sucked in by these other family members.
Right.
So you came to visit, and you just fell in love?
Not really. I went back to school in my mid-30s to get my master's, and my first job was in Peru. And while I was there, my parents moved here and said, my mother called and said, your stuff's in storage with ours. We're moving to New Mexico. Do you want to come too? That's how I ended up here.
You got baited.
Yeah,
That's
I
great.
loved it.
Wonderful.
Yes.
It sounds like you have a lot of connections, cultural connections to Spanish-speaking countries. Is that something in your family or an interest of yours?
Yes, it's very, very strong interest. My brother married a young woman from Peru and has been there for over 30 years. And that's why I ended up going there after I got my master's. And then I also I lived there for a year, taught computer classes, and then coming to New Mexico with all the Latino influence here. Mm-hmm. And then I also lived for almost 4 years in Mexico.
Your family had a lot of influence on your life choices, it sounds like. So what sparked your original interest in renewable energy?
My original interest, I've been reading and studying about renewables since the first Earth Day was my original interest.
Wow, you mean like literally the very first Earth Day that was
1970.
Implemented? Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah. And what kind of renewable energy projects are you working on now that sort of spark your passion?
I'm working on now. I am an environmental educator for New Mexico Solar Energy Association. And I go out and I specialize in working with the kindergarten through 8th graders. And so I go to schools, also public events, often churches, but mostly to schools. And I give presentations that are about an hour long about renewable energy and sustainability.
Do you get kindergartners that will sit down?
Oh, yes.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Kindergartners
they
understand it. They really get passive solar. We have a
Wow.
wonderful model that I carry around in my kit that I take to schools, and I hold up my passive solar house, I explain how it works, I turn it around, and I say, will it work this way? They say, no way. They explain to me, I've got to turn it around so it'll work with the sun. They get it.
Yeah, and they're getting it from a science point of view.
Oh, yes.
But building that passion for the subject, that's great.
Thank you.
And you said you had a background from, I had mentioned you were in Peru, and you mentioned that you had actually gotten the dress in Mexico. So you had done some environmental work there. Was it solar related, or was it more broad?
Well, interesting you should ask, because when I first went down there, that was my dream. I love solar, and I'd already been working for New Mexico Solar Energy. And I wanted to take solar ovens to an indigenous village where I moved.
Solar ovens.
And I could not get the materials for over 2 years. It was impossible. So I probably failed in that effort, but I worked a lot in sustainability, and which is another one of our missions of New Mexico Solar Energy Association. And so I was working on an organic farm, actually, in an indigenous village, and we received volunteers from all over the world, and teaching our neighbors how sustainability could help them and improve their socioeconomic status. So it was a phenomenal experience.
And it seems like a perfect base for the program that I know you're working on here in New Mexico with the young girls. Could you tell us about that?
Okay, I have a group of girls that they name themselves Girls
I can
Gone
see
Green.
the pride in your eyes just instantly.
Thank you. And it developed as an offshoot from one of my presentations. It was the first school in Albuquerque that asked me to present my solar presentation in Spanish. They're a dual language school. It's East San Jose Elementary School. And when I was from about 3rd grade up, I challenge the kids and I invite them. I tell them they can help and actually do something to correct the situation with global warming that we're faced with today. And I challenged kids to get involved. And when I was explaining to them, I have a wonderful light bulb display, and it's hooked up to a watt meter. And I turn on an incandescent light bulb, and typically a 60-watt bulb, and then I put the equivalent CFL, which is a compact fluorescent bulb, and beside it, and it comes in, it averages about 12 watts. And I explained to the kids, just by changing that they can make an impact by changing their light bulbs, that they can make an impact in our energy and our electricity usage in New Mexico. And most adults I've discovered through Girls Gone Green don't have a clue where our electricity comes from. And so while giving this presentation to the 5th graders, I said, why don't you guys have a competition between the 2 5th grade classes and see who can be responsible. And I point to them, each one of you, see if you could be the one to be responsible for changing the most light bulbs. And one little girl jumped up and said, that's not enough. She said, we don't need to just do the school, we need to do all the schools, the city, the state, we've got to clean up this air. And I said, wow, I found a little spark plug.
Yeah.
And so I invited her to stay after school. I invited all the rest of her class to come. I said, we'll start a club if you want to do something. And then the very next hour, I had another 5th grade class. I told them about her and extended the invitation to them. And after school, I had 4 little girls the first day. They were excited. We want to make a club. We want to make a website. We want to do something. Great. I said, I'll be back in 3 days. You invite all your friends and think about what you want to do. And I came back and there were 7 little girls. And I said, where are the boys? And they said, well, we don't know. We told them, but we don't know why they aren't here. Okay, so then I could see they were all passionate. All right, I want you to go home and brainstorm and come up with ideas for names. And let's make this into a club. And so I'll be back in another 3 days. I came back and I had a dozen little girls.
Oh, wow.
And when I asked them, where's the boys again? One little girl raised her hand and said, Miss Lisa, in the 5th grade, if you want to get something done, you have to ask a girl. So they came up with the name that day themselves. I had nothing to do with it. They came up with the name Girls Gone Green.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We've been going for 3 years. They're now 5th to 8th grade girls. We have attended over 20 public events where the girls educate adults about their carbon footprints. And at these events, we've had some just amazing responses. We've had at one of the events at the International Green Idea Show, which was held at the Convention Center, I sent them off in pairs to go take the carbon footprint survey of the vendors.
Okay.
And two of them came back and said, oh man, there's a guy over there and he said global warming is a bunch of bunk. And we thought, oh my gosh. Well, one of my little girls heard it and she's, where is he? I want to go find him. I said, please don't go over there. Don't start a fight. She went marching straight over there. She had to straighten him out. They're very, very passionate. It's amazing.
It's a great age group to work with, and they recognize the truth. You don't have to say very far before they go into very much depth before they understand they really need to take responsibility
That's
for this.
Right. At another event.
What a great program.
Yeah, thank you. At another event, a public event, a woman came over to me, and early in the 2 years, we had actually had CFLs to give out when the people took the survey. And so this woman came up to me, she had her survey in her hand, she had her CFL, and she was furious. She said, see that little girl over there? She said, I'm going to tell you that she shamed me. I said, what? And she said, yeah, she shamed me. I said, what's the matter? She says, well, she asked me if I recycle. I told her, I don't recycle. And she said, you should see the way she rolled her eyes at me, the way she made a big sigh. And she said, you want to know what I'm going to do? I said, what? She said, I'm going to go home and start recycling. And
Good
so,
lesson.
Yes,
Good
really.
lesson.
I said, well, I guess it was good that she shamed you. We've had all kinds of wonderful, positive and negative things happen. The girls also last year, I'm very proud to tell you, created a movie, entered a movie for Aldo Leopold contest, and they won the environmental movie about a local eco-hero.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yes, and then as a consequence of that, they were invited to go and stay in Aldo Leopold's cabin that he built for his new bride up in Tres Piedras, New Mexico.
So how many girls do you have in the program now?
Well, right now I have about 15 on the roster, but unfortunately I broke my leg a few months ago, so Girls Gone Green is kind of on hold, but we'll get active again this fall.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for developing this program and actually taking a proactive approach to getting these children involved. We've been asking our guests, what would you say to children, but you're there influencing them and setting up that next generation to really be active in solving these problems with their minds and their hands.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Most of my girls are bilingual, by the way.
That's
and
good
they
to hear.
present bilingually.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's actually the end of our program. Thank you for watching. Be sure to join us next week for more Renewable New Mexico. Until next time, this is Sean Wells reminding you, we are all solar powered.